Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Well, it's a great pleasure and honour to have a chance to talk to Owen Chadwick about his life. May I address you as Owen for the purpose of this interview? Where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Bromley, Kent, which is then in Kent, now in London, in 1916, in May, and very soon I was evacuated to my grandparents in Lancashire because of the Zeppelins and things.
Can you, as a historian, you may want to go back to the 12th century, but should we just go back to parents and grandparents? Can you tell me anything about that?
The reason why, they were Lancashire folk, both parents. By origin, their father went to Pembroke, Cambridge, as a graduate, and he was a lawyer, London lawyer, so that was why he had to live. He commuted from the suburbs, southern suburbs, so to speak. And Shortland Station, I can remember him walking to a lot. And his mother was sort of woman who would have been well educated today, but in those days didn't go to universities. And that was what we were.
What about their characters? Sometimes you find it's in the tension between parents. One is extrovert, one introvert, or...
Well, I immensely enjoyed my father, who died when I was 14. My mother had 3 more children after me. So
you were the eldest?
No, I was the third. She had 6 children altogether. And I was the third child, and she was therefore, the time when I was closest to my mother was when I was looking after her when she was sort of 75 or something. I wasn't close to her really as a boy. I didn't feel close anyway. I expect she was very nice to me when I was 3, but I don't remember that.
Tell me, you've mentioned your siblings, some of your siblings, and I know that at least one of them is another distinguished historian, and another is also very distinguished. Can you tell me about your brothers and sisters?
Well, my elder brother, the first child, was a boy. Ed John was went to Cambridge, Corpus, and went into a diplomatic service, and became an ambassador to Romania, and then finished the ACD in Paris. And then my sister, next born, was the next child, was a girl, Frances. She became a leader writer on The Economist until an Australian admiral, I don't know how admirals propose marriage, an Australian admiral proposed marriage to her and took her off on his aircraft
carrier
to Australia. And then was me, and then Henry was my brother, was at Dean of Queen's, and then Professor at Oxford, and then Dean of Christchurch, and then Professor at Cambridge, and then Master at House.
And he was a historian.
He was the 4th, that's to say, and then the next daughter was a physiotherapist, and then my brother, the youngest Martin, who could hardly have known his father, I think, perhaps 3 or 4, when he died. Martin was ordained, became chaplain at Trinity Hall, later on went to the living at Charlbury, north of Oxford, a few miles out of Oxford, where he was a very much valued parish priest. That was what they were, 6 of them.
Very interesting set. Where did you first go to school?
We elder three, the war changed it. I'm sorry, not the girls, but we four boys. We elder three, we all went to a prep school in Bromley where we lived. Then my father had the amazing doctrine that his sons must all go to different schools and colleges. So, and that depended how, and we also, because there were 6 of us and there was a slump going on, and things like that, we were all told we must get scholarships. So it didn't make the slightest difference to how hard we worked, but we were all told we must get scholarships. It made a difference. So the eldest went to rugby, and then I was told I wasn't nearly clever enough to go to a college school like that, but that Tunbridge was a place I might get a scholarship. So I did. And,
do you remember anything about your preparatory school? I mean, do you remember any teachers or hobbies or things?
yes, there was a wonderful man called Sladen who had read Oriental languages, Hebrew I think, at Oxford, and then went into the war and was in a trench, was bombed in such a way, or shelled, that he was buried for 2 or 3 days I think, and came out with white hair and a psychological problem I think as well. And one of our staff at the school, he was driving a taxi in London I think, met him driving a taxi and persuaded him to come to the school, and we were incredibly lucky in that way that I think we were the only prep school in England where there was an Oriental linguist on the staff. He taught the Old Testament absolutely brilliantly. And for me, it was quite a different effect on the 2 brothers, me and my younger brother. That for me, it was a lesson in national politics. I mean, is the murder of a tyrant okay? Things like that. So which the Old Testament's full of that sort of thing.
It is.
And for him, my brother, Henry, it was a sort of basically how fascinating theology is. You know. And, but anyway, he was a remarkable man. However, the headmaster had a gift. He was a bad headmaster, I think, really. He had 2 gifts. One, he loved music. And so we had a lovely time with choir and everything. And 2, he was a genius at teaching Latin grammar. Couldn't make it boring.
Good heavens.
I mean, people who didn't make Latin grammar boring are pretty rare, aren't they, really?
Yes, I never met one.
So that was all right. School.
You mentioned choirs and music, and I always ask whether music has meant a lot to the person I'm talking to.
Well, my mother was very musical, and she wanted all her children to be very good at music. And the result was that 2 of them became it, and 4 of them just loved music, and I was one of the 4.
You do love music.
As long as it's not too ancient, and as long as it's not too modern.
Where does the ancient and the modern begin? In other words, what is the window of opportunity for the music?
I think it's got to...
Post-medieval?
I find it very hard to go from Palestrina, you see, or that sort of thing. Or the Elizabethan was quite hard. And then once you get to beyond, I don't know, 1925 or something like that, yeah, they don't seem to me to speak to me in the same way. I don't know, it's maybe mere ignorance.
But who are your favourites? Who are your favourite?
Oh, well, you know, everybody's favourite sort of Bach, to Mozart, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, Schumann, Schubert, all sort of big ones.
German ones mainly.
Lots of German ones, yes, yes. Yes, that's right, I suppose, but yes.
All the ones you mentioned, German, and you
Yes,
could have added up.
Fauré, I suppose, or
Yes.
Verdi, Puccini.
So some opera as well.
Oh, a lot of opera. Yes, my mother loved opera, and at the age of 13 I was being dragged off to, I remember a ghastly moment when we had to see Parsifal.
13, wow.
Longest opera, so nothing much, you know, I mean, incredibly for a boy like me at that age, it didn't work at all. But we were given lots of other opera, which we did love. It was a great help.
Does it influence your work, do you think, in any way? I was thinking of it has been alleged that Maitland, who loved German opera, as you know, called his children after various characters in Wagner.
I never knew that.
Ermintrude, well, they were German names anyway. And some people have analysed some of his writing as if it was music, it has a musical structure, and he used to sing while he was writing, and listen to a lot of music, and some.
Fascinating.
So I wondered whether, I mean, do you listen to? Does it inspire you in your writing at all, or has it ever, or do you keep it entirely
I've not been
separate?
conscious of that.
So you went on to Tunbridge. And what was that like? Did you enjoy it? Or?
Well, I don't think anybody can enjoy being educated as badly as you can be. I mean, it's not the sort of thing anybody can enjoy at all. I mean, I have met one or two people who have said they've enjoyed it, but I won't really have. Anyway.
Were you good at any things other than the educational side? I mean, games, sports?
Yeah, well, I was a rugby footballer. Yes. Like in the scrum, because in the scrum you can do your good anonymously. I mean, you don't, with no sense of display on the field, where people could watch you doing noble things and all that.
So where in the scrum were you?
In the middle of it, the
middle,
hooker. Yes.
the hooker. Ah. And didn't you get a blue for rugby?
Yes, I captained Cambridge.
You look a bit slight for a. But
yes, I think I was a wee bit heavier then.
And other sports?
Oh, I loved other sports, but I didn't
excel in them.
Shine at them. I loved cricket, and I loved fives, and squash. No good at tennis.
And it was the modest contribution to team activities that you liked, being part of something larger but not being conspicuous, as well as the.
Well, I just yes, probably. You could sort of feel you were doing something. Yes.
Rather like rowing, but you didn't row.
No.
Whether by this time were you beginning to find that any subjects were particularly gripping you?
Yes. And it made a big difference. I was utterly bored. I mean, my father's idea was, this boy ought to become a lawyer after me. And the best way to be a lawyer is to read classics, part 1, and then go to law part 2. He had read mathematics part 1 and gone to law part 2. Well, by the time I was 15, or 14 even, although I was really rather good at Latin, but not at Greek, I was bored. These things which I now think are lovely, like Aeschylus and Sophocles and Euripides and those sort of people, I thought were colossal bores. And therefore, I was a bored boy. because I was on the classical side. And we had a man called D.C. Somerville
Oh yes,
on the staff. You know
it's
about
well
him?
known. Yes, didn't he edit Toynbee?
He did a summary
Toynbee.
of Toynbee's numerous volumes.
That's right.
And
That's-
Toynbee's volumes were coming out
Hmm.
while I was at school,
Hmm.
their first volumes. And he was rather contemptuous of them, actually. But he had the merit that he would give us what we would call supervisions. I mean, individual essays, especially as we got older. And although I think I've read a lot of his work, of course, and although I don't think, I mean, I think he admired Lytton Strachey. You can't do that for a historian, really. But still, he did make the comparison between a bored classic and this lovely Strachey-ish history.
Yes.
It was really rather enchanting.
Hmm.
So I look back upon him as benefactor.
Hmm. And he was the one who taught you history. I mean, he was your
Well, only in this sense that he refused to teach the classics in form, but he took us individually, you see.
I see. Yes.
Yes.
In classics. Yeah. And were you beginning to get interested in ordinary history? Were you getting interested in history by this time, or?
Oh, very much so, yes. Yes, yes. Of course, the classics thing had made me hugely interested in ancient history. I mean, I wasn't bored with ancient history at all. What I was bored with was the language, and learning the language.
And did you have any inspiring history teachers? I mean, straight history teachers?
Only in that way, Somerville.
Somerville.
Yes, yes, yes. No, he was a real historian, though a sort of populist historian, but he was real one. He was also a very eccentric character, so that much amused the school by his eccentricities. Enormously tall man whose trousers only got down to about there, you know.
Religion will come up more than once, perhaps, in this interview, and I wondered whether either of your parents were really,
My mother was a
deeply
Christian, had become at some point a Christian Scientist. And all her children voted against it because they couldn't believe that matter didn't exist. And so for my adolescent years I was persuaded. Did you ever read a novel by Somerset Maugham called, it was sort of autobiography of a novel. Anyway, his philosophy of life seemed to me just the thing. I remember.
This was a book that influenced you. You read at the time, and
Yes. Well, I don't know whether it influenced me. It seemed to fit
yes,
what I already believed, really,
which was
which was not much.
really, you weren't a very enthusiastic
On the contrary.
Christian.
On the contrary. No,
Really?
no. And it was Hitler who made the difference to me.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I know the name Martin comes in here, but that's the opposite of me. I was very religious at school and went on evangelical boys camps and things like
Oh,
this.
yes.
And then
My brother Henry went to the local boys' camps. Yes.
OIQ boys camps with my uncle. So at school you attended chapel, but
Chapel was compulsory in those days.
but it didn't mean very much to you, and you weren't very interested in it.
No. No, that's right.
Having got a scholarship there, at the end of your time at Tunbridge, you took entrance to
St John's College,
Cambridge.
Cambridge, yes.
Why that college?
because I was good at rugby football, and that was a good college at rugby football.
Oh, that's a good reason. And did you get a scholarship, or?
I'm down in their lists as having a scholarship, and I did get a scholarship, but only in my third year.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, I couldn't, didn't want to. And there, I took a classical exam to get in.
Mm.
But I wasn't nearly good enough at it. I'd been frightfully being bored. You're idle.
Mm.
And so when I arrived at St. John's, I said, I love history and I hate classics. Can I please change my subject? And they said, no, you've been accepted as a classic. So for 2 years, I had a lovely time doing no work but playing rugby football. Because then I could change to history.
Mm. Excellent. What year did you come up?
Yeah, I came up 35.
35.
Mm.
So it's the war is beginning to, or the potential
Well,
war.
the first year or two at Cambridge, I don't think I was very politically minded. The Spanish Civil War was troubling at 1936. And I don't think I was moved by it at all. I mean, both sides were just as bad as each other, kind of thing. But then the first something that I cared hugely about was Martin Niemöller, when in March 1937, wasn't it? He was tried by the German court and acquitted. And then, as he walked out of the court, he was rearrested by the Gestapo. And I thought that was about the most hellish thing possible of justice or injustice. And so suddenly I woke up to Hitler. And it coincided with the change from classics to history. So I wanted to know something for the first time, really. And 37. And what I wanted to know, because there seemed a curious parallel with this barbarism in Central Europe with 4th, 5th century AD, which I really wanted to know badly about. So suddenly, I was hard at the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, academically speaking, and really working for the first time academically. And then in March 38, he occupied Austria. And I'd been climbing in Austria and so on. I knew I'd been in the Tyrol anyway, quite a bit. And anyway, so I was involved in, I don't know how to put it really. Anyway, just as some people reacted against Hitler by becoming communists, I reacted against Hitler by becoming Christian. What are the moral foundations of Europe?
Interesting. How did you know about the Martin Niemöller case? Was it all over the papers, or?
I was full of our papers had it all. Yes.
That's how. But you hadn't known about him before. You'd never heard of him.
Only that our newspapers were talking about resistance to Germany and things like that, and he was obviously a mouth that dared to speak. So he was quite well known in England in that date, I think. Yes.
And was the first parallel that you saw between the rise of Hitler and the Germanic attacks on the Roman Empire? Was it because barbarism was attacking civilization in both cases?
Yes. That here was civilization being overthrown, really relatively mature civilization being overthrown by some tribes.
Indeed. Was it? I mean, the Jewish predicament, was that part of this?
Only became to be important in the Crystal Night of December, wasn't it, or was it November 38? I wasn't angry about Munich, as some people were. I remember compiling a list of 6 books to take with me in the army when war broke out in 38, but it didn't, and I was pleased because I wanted to finish my degree.
You don't remember what the books were, I don't suppose.
I remember a perfectly absurd collection, but the only one I remember is the Letters of Gregory the Great in Latin. I thought, well, I never read it actually in the army, I can't believe.
So, the Jewish, I mean, how much was known? We're always being told different accounts about how much.
Well, it was the first 1933 April, May, where the Nazis made it absolutely clear, and Hitler made it clear indeed, didn't he, that the Jews must get out of Germany, or at least be badly treated in Germany. And that was bad, but I was rather young in 33 still to get angry about it, sort of thing. And I just thought, well, if the world goes wrong. And then in the middle period, where Hitler was trying to look quite nice to the international powers and the great defender of Europe against Stalin, then the Jewish problem wasn't so great. Nothing happened to me quite, even though I went by train to Germany and was in Munich very soon after the Crystal Night. I was maturing very slowly, I think. And it was only really becoming fiercely important to me in 38, 9. But nothing happened to me. It's like a friend of mine, was an undergraduate of our time, did what I did, went to Germany and stayed in a hotel in Munster, I think it was, and got up in the morning and wanted to buy paper. So he went out to the front door of the hotel, and across the road was a newspaper shop. And this had a brown shirt standing in front of it, and great chalk marks across the window saying Judah. So my friend went across the road and went into the shop. The brown shirt didn't try to stop him. And behind the counter was a little frightened shopkeeper. So then he bought not a newspaper, but 10 woodbines of all things. And then came out and crossed the road, and as he was going up the steps, he told me this, as he was going up the steps of the hotel, he realized he hated Hitler. Now this was 1936, so a little bit earlier than I. I remember in Austria in 1938 was it 38? Tyrol, maybe 37. Tyrol. We were in the village cafe, and of course they were speaking not sort of German I knew. In the they were working men of the mountains, and it was only gradually I and my friend realized that the reason partly why we couldn't understand them properly was not only they were speaking Austrian, because they were using four-letter words about Hitler, that sort of thing. Yeah. Must be 37, because in 38 they wouldn't have dared, no doubt.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, coming back to your, you just did 1 year of history, did you? I mean, your last year, or did you do?
Well, I did, because I'd come late to it. I was the passionate way to stay with the 4th and 5th centuries A.D. After you got history part 2, which I did. And that was when I got the scholarship.
That was in 1 year.
In 1 year. And then in the church, in theology chapters, part 2 or part 3 maybe, graduate bit, you could do church history. And in that way I could go on with what I was doing. I mean, I could, there was no teaching in church history. The professor was A.T.N. Gaga. And
Was who?
what?
Did you say he was Gaga, or did you?
Well, that's no statement.
You're not going to tell me his name now, after.
No, certainly not.
Okay.
He was very ancient. Because he got a non-retiring age for professor those days.
Yes. So you did it yourself in your own time. You say there was no teaching, really.
Yeah, I did. I worked for myself, and yes, I worked for myself. Yes, I did. I was not supervised hardly at all, really. And I enjoyed it.
Were there already any historians? I mean, you've done 1 year, and now you're doing a second, but either at school or now, any historians who were beginning to stand up as examples? I mean, whether Acton or any other historians who you really admire.
I mean, by the history tripos.
Yes.
Yes. Well, did you ever know Christopher Brooks' father, Zachary? He was the professor of medieval history.
I know the name, yes.
He was, to me, a very inspiring lecturer. He was on medieval history, the early part especially, which I loved. And he was an orator. And some historians don't approve of orators as lecturers, but I loved it. But the man who affected me, of course, was Martin Charlesworth, the president of St. John's, who was a very fine ancient historian, and happened to be, at the moment when I was turning to 4th and 5th century Rome, he also happened to be turning to 4th and 5th century Rome from the Augustus where he started and all that. He was a wonderful teacher. Martin Charlesworth is a wonderful man, rip-roaring man, sort of full of go and humour and generosity.
In what way did he teach you? Was it supervisions or?
Yes, yeah, supervision.
In your third year?
My third year, yes, that's right. But he did more than supervise. I mean, I went to take her to the Roman, went and walked Hadrian's Wall with him, that sort of thing. Yes, he's a very fine teacher.
And the relations between teachers and students was much closer at that time. I mean, you could go walking with the master of your college along Hadrian's Wall, which would be unlikely to happen.
It was only going to happen now.
I doubt it.
See, the Trinity men used to do it with Trevelyan, didn't they?
Oh, yes.
In the Lake District, I think.
Oh, yes, yes. It went on until the 50s, 60s, but then it was too busy. Too many research assessments.
Yes, of course there were people found, I mean, Philip Grierson was only just older than I was, but he was just beginning to lecture. Just beginning. No, that can't be true. Is it? I'm not sure. Anyway, I seem to remember going to one of Philip's very first courses of lectures on. And I went to Runciman on Byzantine
Did you?
history.
That must have been exciting. His books are
It
exciting.
wasn't.
His books were
Well,
exciting.
I've heard Stephen Runciman give a lecture at the age of 90 or 80, I think, maybe. It was brilliant. But when he was lecturing to me when he was 30, he was sort of stuffed. There was only 5 or 6 of us in the audience, and he was stuffed with information. Too much information.
Too little rhetoric. Too little rhetoric.
Oh yes, no rhetoric at all.
I used to go to Hugh Trevor Roper's lectures, which were
Oh gosh,
quite,
yes, that
quite
would have been
rhetorical.
rhetorical too.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed, they were very, very good.
Did you ever go to Robert Blake or?
Yes, indeed. I was at Oxford at that time, so
I am very fond of Robert Blake, and I thought he was a very good historian.
I enjoyed those
Very
days.
humane man.
What about your own lecturing style? Do you enjoy lecturing? Or did you enjoy lecturing?
I enjoyed lecturing to Part 2 people, special subjects, because although most of the class would be beta and a few of them would be gamma, there'd always be 3 or 4 minds who you're actually learning from, lecturers learning from, I mean, you know, wonderful young minds, absolutely brilliant things. And that was very exciting, I always used to think. But that only happened with, when you were dealing in special subjects. I mean, you had to be deep into the documents of history and so on. Before that happened to me, anyway. That was lovely. But
That was interactive teaching. I mean, you're learning from them. In a lecture, you can hardly learn from the audience except by their expressions on their faces.
well, that's right.
So the actual lecturing, when you stand up in front of an audience, did you enjoy that?
I wasn't shy at all. I wasn't shy. I didn't disenjoy, except that sometimes the faculty said to me, I would teach German history from 1550 to 1650 or something like that, you see. I thought, right, nothing. It didn't matter to me at all, and if it didn't matter to me, why should it matter to the class?
So we've got to the end of your undergraduate degree. What did you do then? The war must have come.
The most marvellous thing that ever happened to me was so absurd that at the end of Part 2, or maybe in Part 3, church history, Professor Creed came and said, I want to see you. He appeared looking in a very old-fashioned costume, and he said that you must go to Germany for a year, to a German university to do more history.
This is about 1939, is it?
This was not merely 1939, it was June 1939. You see, the Tripos was, I suppose, the first days of June. And it's so, I thought it was wonderful. The University of Cambridge never actually heard that there was going to be a war shortly. Anyway, so they said, well, the college will give you all the money. So the college gave me the money, and to go for a year to Germany. They're very generous. And so in October 39, I wrote them saying, actually, give me all this money to go to Germany, and it can't be done at the minute. What should I do with this money? And then they very marvellously said, spend it on something sensible. The trouble is now I can't remember what I did spend it on.
You didn't spend it on travel, or?
Well, travelling wasn't so easy by then.
No.
No.
So what did you do instead of going to Germany?
Well, because you see, the relationship of Christian civilization to Christianity, I had in March that 39 decided I really ought to be ordained. So by June end of June or early days, July 38, 39, I was already at Theological College.
In Cambridge?
Oxford.
Oxford.
Custom.
Mm.
And that wasn't too difficult. You'd think that there was a terrible, in September 39, after one term, do I go on with this or not? You see, I had no conscientious objection in me. It'd be easier for me if I'd been a conscientious objector, but none. I had none. No, this was just war, in my opinion. And as long as the phony war was on, this was okay, at least not too bad. The conflict of conscience. And all my advisors were saying, go on, you get yourself ordained and become a chaplain to the forces. So I went on. Well, that worked all right until the 10th of May 1940, when the Germans crossed into France. And I think the most conscientiously unhappy period of my life was from June till September 1940. I was doing this, becoming a chaplain, as I thought. I wasn't sure I was right. Anyway, I did. It seemed when London was being blitzed, it seemed rather sort of secure. Anyway, they sent me to be trained in security in Huddersfield, industrial place. And after the time I done that, I applied to be a chaplain to the forces or army, or in fact I had an offer from a regiment to come and help us. But you weren't allowed to unless the bishop agreed. In those days the bishop had to put you, and the bishop thought that I was much too immature to be a chaplain. I needed a bit more. So Wellington College offered me a chaplaincy there, because they had strong military connections in those days still. So I thought, well, this is, I shall do that for a year, and there'll be a different bishop. And well, then they had a crisis after I was a year at Wellington. They had a crisis where the senior chaplain left, and everything. Of course, the headmaster had been killed by a bomb, and anyway, the powers that be preferred to keep me at Wellington. So I remained as chaplain of Wellington for the period of the war. And then Trinity Hall said, come and be a fellow here, a historian fellow. And I did, thinking, I wasn't a bit sure after my experiences that I wished to be an academic. And I remember actually saying to Trinity Hall, well, I'll try it out, see sort of thing no young man would ever say now, see if I like it.
Yes, you wouldn't get your fellowship now with such a comment. You must have already had some reputation that they chose you to be a fellow and so on. I mean, had you started to write and do research? And those days one didn't do a PhD, but had you got some published writings or something?
They knew I was busy on, but I hadn't published anything. No, I think I published an odd article or two. I think so, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, I didn't ask why you want me or anything like that. I just thought, let's do this thing and see. And of course I very much enjoyed Trinity Hall. I had a lovely college.
The great college of Sir Henry Maine, who was the great college of Sir Henry Maine, who is
Exactly,
my,
Sir Henry Maine, yes, rather.
one of my heroes.
And the senior tutor was Charles Crawley, who was a historian, and I loved him. Greek Eastern question in the Mediterranean in the 19th century.
And you taught history.
I taught medieval history because Charles was doing all the modern history. And I don't think I was very good at it, but I liked it.
This is about 1947, 8?
Well, I think I refused to leave Wellington in 45, and 44 indeed, to come to Cambridge, because I thought Cambridge wasn't war-minded enough for me. And 45, of course, the trouble is I needed to make sure of a good successor at Wellington. I wouldn't leave until somebody had to be demobilized. And they got demobilized to 46. So I first walked into Trinity Hall on the 1st of January 1947, which was the coldest, snowiest winter we've ever had.
I came back from India that year. I remember it vaguely. To Oxford.
Gosh, I was cold, yes. I loved you all the same.
So when you came to Cambridge in 1947, who were the figures of Cambridge history who you remember or were outstanding? You mentioned...
in the middle of the war, Zachary Brooke had written to me from Cambridge saying a man called David Knowles has published a book on the monastic order in England, which is absolutely top class. You must read it. So naturally, when I came to Cambridge, I was interested to find I could know this figure who was in Peterhouse. And formed a friendship with him. And then I was lucky enough to get to know Trevelyan pretty well, although he was not my college or anything like that. But Louis Clark, the former director of the Fitzwilliam Museum, was a fellow of Trinity Hall, and he became a great friend, and he was a considerable friend of Trevelyan. So that Trevelyan and I used to meet at Louis' house, really. Sort of at parties, you know. And I was never that kind of English historian. I mean, I liked the Italians. Who else?
On the character, I mean, of both of them, I've read work by both of them. Knowles, the only thing I can remember is that every time he wrote a new book, he used to take all the books that he'd used for the last book and sell them or give them to someone else, and he had a small bookcase, and he would just fill it with books on the current project. And as I'm a book hoarder, this used to rather appall me that he could get rid of older books. Which
I didn't know this at all. No, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. It's possible. He was ascetic in the sense that when you went to see him in his room, there were two chairs. One was extremely uncomfortable, which he was sitting in, and one was quite comfortable, which you had to sit in. And this was somehow, I disapproved of this story, but Marjorie Chibnall, who was a medieval historian, she said it was wonderful that this should happen.
Well, he was a Dom, I suppose he was a monastic disposition.
It was downside originally, but of course he revolted against it.
And you don't remember him having a small bookcase, or do you remember?
I don't remember him having a bookcase at all.
Well, that's it. I think he kept his books to the minimum. And then Trevelyan, of course, who is was a hero of mine, and
He was a hero.
yes,
Yes.
particularly chapter 3 and so on.
Yeah.
What? I mean, did you go to the Lake District? He was associated.
No, I
with?
never did that. No, no. I only knew him in Cambridge.
Mm.
But he lived, after he retired from Trinity, he lived just next to Selwyn.
Mm.
And so after I became Master of Selwyn in '56, he was to the bottom of my garden, really, or I was at the bottom of his garden, perhaps.
Mm. For nearly 20 years, I shared a room with Christopher Morris in King's.
Mm.
I think he might have been just perhaps a little later than this, but
Christopher had a particular place in the history faculty in my time because he was a born examiner. I mean, if you really wanted to get the class of some doubtful candidate right, he was much more likely to get it right than the person who was bound to get it wrong was Duncan Forbes, who had ideas to. But Christopher was a very good examiner.
was he?
Mm.
That makes a story. I examined with him when I first came to King's.
Mm.
I was on the entrance exams with Christopher, and I remember he wrote me a note saying, "Alan, you have the makings of a good examiner." I didn't realise what high praise this was.
Oh, yes. Good.
The other person who I knew when I first came to King's a little bit was John Saltmarsh.
Yes, of course you would do. Yes, well, he was a tremendous character and great fun, but he was very much a lone man.
Hmm.
I never really knew him well
Hmm.
at all.
Eccentric as well. He used to dread. He was somewhat eccentric in
Yes, somewhat eccentric. Great. That was part of the great fun.
his garb. I mean, he'd always looked as if he was out on his way out to a Fenland parish somewhere.
That's right. Yeah.
To trudge around. And the other friend I had for some time was Arthur Hibbert.
I didn't really know him.
Didn't know him,
No.
but he was a historian of the Inquisition and medieval
Yeah.
historian. Were there any other historians at that time who you got to know particularly well? I don't know when.
Of course, Harry Hinsley being a contemporary of mine at St. John's.
Hmm.
Frank Thistlethwaite was trying to create American history
Hmm.
with William Brock. Those are the two who really tried to create. You see, I wanted to learn in American history in the History Tripos as one of these modern papers you had to do.
Hmm.
If you were doing nothing but early medieval history, you had to somehow sort of. And I wanted to. I found I couldn't do American history because wasn't such a paper. And that was created after the war by those two, and very well done. No, I had to go to Theory on the State, which had too philosophical an element for me, really. So I did. I was in my history, history part 2. Yeah. I was a member of with Annan of Oakeshot's seminar on political thought, and I remember thinking I could understand Hobbes before I went to Oakeshot's seminar, and after Oakeshott had dealt with Hobbes, I realised I couldn't understand Hobbes at all. But he was very good on Marx. Very good teacher about Marx. Karl Marx. Of course, he didn't totally approve of Marx, but he was very good.
I would have thought he totally disapproved. Well, largely disapproved of Marx. I've just been reading some Oakeshott recently.
Oh, yes, oh well.
And I would have thought he disapproved quite strongly of him, but
Yes. But his lectures weren't enormously. I mean, he obviously didn't agree with Marx, but it was only like that.
Was he a good lecturer?
Yes, he was.
Apart from mystifying one on Hobbes.
I mean, he mystified one. No, he was a good lecturer.
Something that a society which was set up and I went to some of the last meetings because it was in my rooms, was set up by Oscar Browning and then carried on by Christopher Morris, was the Political Society. Did you ever go to the Political Society in King's?
No.
It was a sort of history society.
No, I didn't.
Which Christopher
I
ran.
never heard of it till
Didn't
this
you?
minute.
Oh?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was the University History Society, but obviously it wasn't. It was a
Or perhaps it was.
parochial event. So how long did you stay in Trinity Hall, and where did you go after
10
that?
years. No, well, it was 1st of January 47 to 30th September 56, so it was one term short of 10 years.
Hmm. And you really enjoyed it, and
I loved it.
Hmm.
Yes. I loved the people, and I loved the college, and I enjoyed the work very much. And
well, it's got a very beautiful tiny garden, as you know, Fellows Garden. I'm trying to think, who wrote Portrait of a Lady, and the American novelist, anyway, this very famous American novelist whose name escapes me, when he was asked what the most beautiful spot he'd ever been to, Henry James. Henry James said that the most beautiful spot on earth was the Trinity Fellows Garden. That was the centre of the world for him, which was very nice. I presume it was still, yes, it was still famous for its legal.
yes, strong. We had 4 legal fellows out of about 20. Those days, now they've got about 60 actually. In those days, about 20 fellows, and 4 of them were lawyers. They were good lawyers too. There's a little bit of that still.
Yes. Why did you leave? You were offered another job, or?
Well, they elected me Master of Selwyn.
Straight from there.
So I, by then of course I had a wife and children, and I moved there in 56, autumn.
You hadn't become Dixie Professor by that time?
Yeah, no, I hadn't. Immediately, almost, not such immediately, 56 autumn I went to Selwyn, in 58 they elected me Dixie Professor. And that had the advantage, or disadvantage, I'm not sure which advantage, I think, of having a place on both the Divinity Board and the History Board.
When you went to Selwyn, I've been reading a little bit about the founding of Selwyn, which, as you know, caused a great stir and controversy in Cambridge, as the first avowedly modern religious foundation. And when you went, it was still not fully incorporated. Is that right?
It was on the way to it. Yes, I'm sometimes credited with having created the incorporation, but actually I was inheriting a partially process, a thing in process.
Was there any dispute at that, in the final stages of incorporation, or?
Only that John Boyce Smith, who was regarded as the infallible man at everything, said it's impossible to incorporate this college because it's still got such a strong religious content in its statutes. So then, being a historian, I was able to point out to the Council of the Senate, to its surprise, and to John Boyce's surprise, that the law of 1871 didn't apply to colleges founded after 1871.
The law of 1871 said that colleges must not be...
colleges must not be denominational. They can have chapels, and in fact they're bound by law, I think, to have. The same law said they must have chapels and chaplains. That's still the law, I think, which is why colleges partly, some colleges anyway, don't, probably. I expect they all want colleges anyway. But Churchill doesn't have to have a chaplain. I think they eventually got one.
So that single line of your argument completely
that did that
did the
help.
trick. Well, we've got to Selwyn, and we've also got to the end of this particular tape, so I'm sure you would relish a little rest. So we were just talking about your other musical taste, if we can just go back over that. As well as serious, as well as being taken to Parsifal and things like this, you learnt to enjoy Gilbert and Sullivan, is that right?
Very much. All the Gilberts, yes, even the Sorcerer, or whatever it is, and
Rudigor.
Trial by Jury was there, I think. Yeah, Rudigor, certainly.
What did, I mean, was it the music, was it the words, or was it a combination that...
Oh, it's all a combination, isn't it? Gilbert and Sullivan, it's a unity. I think I didn't appreciate how witty Gilbert was when I was 13. You don't understand that at all, I think, do you?
No.
But gradually the prose turned into poetry, or turned into which Sullivan did so wonderfully well with.
Well, today, the 29th of February, is a very appropriate day to remember, because that's the theme on which the Pirates of Penzance hinges.
Yes.
Lovely. I was going to ask you, now we've reached Selwyn College, some people have argued that the considerable productiveness and creativity of many people who have been in Oxford and Cambridge is related to the college system and the way in which people of different disciplines interact there. Do you think that is an important factor?
I don't know. You see, it's my only experience of life, really. I mean, I have never been in another university context but Cambridge, but except for just the year I got at Custom, if you count that at all. Of course, I did do a sabbatical year. Eventually, having been given this money before the war to go to Germany, I felt I had to go to Germany at some point. And so I did do a term at Göttingen, a term at Tübingen. And I later on I did a term at the Canberra ANU. But my whole conception of university is Cambridge. I'm very narrow.
But have you found, being in a college where if you have a problem which overlaps into other disciplines?
Oh yes.
It's
but well, it's the faculty too. I mean, we get great help from. But the disciplines haven't got to be too wide. I mean, I never get much help that I know of from an engineer or something, although I respect them hugely. I think it's good all the same, but then, as I say, I have no experience of anything else.
I mean, the mention of engineers, were there any people in other disciplines who maybe you didn't get help from, but you came to be friends and influenced, you liked very much and respected very much?
Yes, I think there were several, probably. We were very happy at college, and several of them became great friends. A medical, called Edward Ford, who...
what was his name?
Edward Ford. He was an anatomist by origin, I think. He was a lovely man. And David Harrison, who was master, not immediately, but after one master of Selwyn. But he was a chemical engineer. And a glorious engineer called Robin Jackson, who terribly, sadly died at, I don't know, was going to say middle 50s, something like that. Awfully sad, but lovely, lovely man. And they're all wise heads. But I'm not quite confident enough, because of my ignorance, to know whether the Germans say how mad you are to put everybody with different disciplines into one college. And why don't you have a college which is full of historians and let them get on with it? I'm not prepared to say that's impossible. I just prefer what I used to.
Did you find, I mean, micropolitics of Cambridge, like anywhere else, is quite difficult. And running a college is notoriously difficult because you don't have many sanctions and not many gifts to offer either. So it's done by diplomacy and charisma. Did you find it a difficult job?
I think I did it first because I was the youngest of the fellows, so to speak, when I arrived. And they were humane and tolerant. I was much more bored with committees of the history faculty than the committees of the college. I couldn't be bored with the history of the college, committees of the college too, especially if they were finance or
Have you any advice to the aspiring young master of a college in the Cornford tradition? Or
no, certainly not. The circumstances are probably wholly different now.
Simultaneously, you'd become Dixie Professor of Ecclesiastical History, and it's probably be an interesting thing just to have a short discussion about your views about history. One of the things that interested me in reading about your work was that you seem to be caught in a dilemma between moralizing and not moralizing. I mean, that you feel that morality is a central feature of human beings, and therefore we have to, and we are moral creatures.
Probably get too much morality in there. No. Well, I've just written a thing about Charlotte Corday, and it partly merged into the tyrannicide, the whole theory of tyrannicide, so that I'm starting comparing the executions of Charles I or Louis XVI with Stauffenberg in 1944, or other famous tyrannicides. That's morality. I mean, the times in which it may be better to murder somebody than not.
You think there are occasions?
Well, I think the whole thing about the Catholic Church has laid down occasions in its canons, and I think that the whole business of Hitler, Nazis, made all that stuff obsolete, really. Well, I say all this, you see, in Corday, and perhaps you think that's moralizing, bringing too much morality into history.
Why has it made it obsolete? You mean it's no longer even worth discussing whether?
Well, no, I think circumstances could arise where it's worth discussing. You normally the view is, of course, that an individual who takes it himself that the only time its right to kill a ruler as if the magistrates decide, and hence some people will justify the execution of Charles I, and some people will justify the execution of Louis XVI.
Mm.
Though the magistrates in both cases were just a wee bit dubious.
Mm. But you would extend it beyond that. I mean, in the case of Hitler, obviously. In the case of Hitler or Pol Pot or Stalin.
Yes, there comes a point where, I mean, one of the rules is that it must be certain that the situation after the murder is better than the situation before.
Mm.
And how you know it's certain is, of course, I mean, they murdered Heydrich. With English help, the Czechs murdered Heydrich. Well, Heydrich, if anybody ever deserved being murdered, Heydrich was Van. But the result was, of course, the killing of lots of Czechs. So the question is the situation really worse or better than that?
Well, with Louis XVI, it was difficult to predict what was the outcome.
Yes, it was difficult. Yes. But that becomes a political necessity, that if Mussolini hadn't been murdered by patriots, by guerrillas, and we had to put him on trial, you'd have had a marvelous propagandist time, rather like Milosevic did.
Yes.
So that from the point of view of the situation being better generally, it was much better that he should be murdered by somebody, putting it crudely.
You've written a book on Acton.
Yes. Admired Acton very much. Of course, I had his library in the University Library. A great library. If you're a church historian, it was Acton's love. He never published anything more than a few articles on it, but it was his love. And he collected he bought steadily the 19th century when people were having revolutions. That Spain was selling its monastic books. Portugal was selling its monastic books. Sometimes Italy was selling its monastic. The suppressing monasteries everywhere through Europe. And all and masses of these books are in our library. I mean, it's wonderful. In
the university library.
In our university library. So that you couldn't help but be in love with Acton if he was fostering your own information, your own discovery, or your own diminution of your ignorance.
I mean, there are many reasons to love him. One was his erudition, as you say, and his library and his wealth of. Another is the theme of his life's work, which is liberty and conditions of liberty.
Yes.
Was it the combination of these things?
All these things mattered to me, I think. Yes, they did. But again, he's the doubt, of course, in this is whether the morality took over sometimes from the history, or was allowed to be too prominent. So I think, after all, there he is.
Yes, that's a picture. Well, I'll try and get that later. And then there's the question of whether the learning overwhelmed, the famous question of whether the learning overwhelmed the writer. I was looking at his famous slips recently in the UL for the first time, and you could see that you could do nothing with them. They were just...
No. Nobody's slips are used to anybody else, really, are they? I think.
Well, except I put all mine on the internet, and they're usable. But it requires a further stage, which he never did, which is to have some kind of heading. These are just sort of wonderful sources, but I looked at the slip packets, and they're not organized in any way, and there's no heading. So if he wanted to find everything, Fraser had a method like this, J.G. Fraser, but he had a heading like, magical hair, and then all the slips under magical hair would go there. Keith Thomas, whose method I've observed, has the same thing. The slips under magic or whatever go in one place, but as far as I could see, Acton's were just in the first stage. He then had to go through them again and order them in some way.
There was some kind of order, isn't there? Got wrong thing. Reading the lexicon. The Acton papers.
I think it may be the order of the sources, or very broad categorization, but the ones I looked at were from one or two particular authorities. But the subject indexing, which is what you have to do.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so one just wonders whether, I mean, there were the plans, of course. Just leave it on the the plans to write the vast history of liberty, or the Cambridge history. I was reading Maitland's piece on Acton, and the plan was there, and then he died, and never got executed. From your study of him, are there any other reasons why you think he produced so little, wrote so little?
Well, I think I've known other people in my life who were immensely learned and never produced anything. They were so much in love with diminishing their ignorance that they never actually communicated to the rest of us.
Well, my namesake K.B. Macfarlane was famous for one article on bastard feudalism.
Yes, that's right.
And that little book on Wycliffe. So it was often a joke about Cambridge medieval historians, that they wrote very little. If you were to, I mean, this is a difficult question, rather a naive one, but if you were to characterize your own historical approach and give advice to a young historian, how would you?
I think I'd refrain from giving advice to a young historian.
How would you describe?
Kind.
How would you describe? I mean, are you a positivist? Do you start with the documents and then?
Yes, I think so. Yes. I don't like too much theory. I don't like Toynbee at all, and that's not because he was of a particular age in history. It's just that the whole notion behind it seems to me fallacious. I admit that I, and like everybody else, has strong prejudices or something, but I don't know what they are, so I just don't worry about them.
Some people, as you know, think that history is a fascinating tale of random accidents, and that there are no patterns or whatever, and Toynbee was one of those who thought he could see the patterns, and there have been others. Others say that there is no point in studying something if it has no patterns or meaning, and you can't learn anything from it. Where do you must have thought about
I think that's a good warning, but not quite true. That I wouldn't quite know whether, you see, Butterfield tried to prove, didn't he, that politicians who know no history must be worse politicians than those who do know history. And I suspect that might be that the Balkans might be better off at the moment if one of people like David Owen or Lord Ashdown had known some history. And I do think that understanding anything needs a history to it. That it's not an isolated fact. No fact is isolated, is it? Really, always has explanations. No doubt, some of them are wrong,
but how does it help if, unless there are some patterns, there's some recurrence in the?
Yes, yeah. There are patterns. Obviously, in a thing like democracy, or dictatorship, or oratory. And I think if a historian just thinks that he's dealing in individual facts, and they are individual facts, he's not doing history. He's writing, isn't he? He's writing Who's Who or something.
Yes. How far, I mean, most of your work has concentrated on the history of the Christian Church and the Reformation and so on. I mean, do you think you'd have written it differently if you hadn't been ordained and a Christian?
I don't. This question I think is a meaningless one, really, in terms that if I try to answer it. But I loved history before I became a historian, before I became a Christian. So that I think that I would still have wanted to know a lot of history. If I had become a lawyer, as my father wanted, I wouldn't have had so much time, of course. But that's an interesting question to me, which I've never confronted before.
That's interesting too, as an answer, very honest answer. There's so many more things that you did after Selwyn. You went on to be Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University for 2 years. As you said, you don't really know anywhere else, but I'm writing a book about Cambridge at the moment and trying to work out what it is and what it's meant. Can you help me in any way? Is there anything that I should know about this ancient institution? I mean, it does seem to me that religion is both the heart of it and also a special form of religion is the heart of it. I wondered whether you think religion is very important in Cambridge.
Well, naturally, I think so, yes. And I think so. I mean, I feel that the signs of it in it are. I'm not sure that chapel going, so to speak, but wonderful way. I believe that Clare Chapel is a wonderfully sort of flourishing place, and it ought always been, and the kings, after all, those vastly influential in the world, and so is Trinity, so is John's. I'm talking nonsense to you, I think. I mean, I'm talking what is useless.
It isn't useless at all. It's so I mean, it's such a general question that it's difficult to say, but I've written a book about Japan recently, and Japan is in some ways helpful for thinking about Cambridge, because somewhere like Kyoto, I don't know if you've been to Japan, but Kyoto is a very religious feeling place. It's full of temples, it's full of monks.
It's a shrine place.
Shrine place. And yet the religion is rather indistinct. If you try and press people on their beliefs, they're not very happy to, or they don't know what they are really. And certainly interviewing a lot of masters of Cambridge colleges, many of them say, well, I presided over St. John's or King's or wherever it was. Of course, I'm not a Christian, I'm an agnostic, but I felt it was important, and I was prepared to do it because I see it is important. And that's what I like about Cambridge. It seems to combine dignity and reverence without dogma.
Yes, right. Yes, it's strong. It's strong. It's not just woolly.
Mm.
I think that through. But yeah, it was awfully interesting being Vice Chancellor.
69. Was it 69 or
69 to 71.
71?
Rather,
Very difficult period.
it was a very interesting period. Yes, yes. You had to sort of be very serene.
So it was the time, I mean, for watchers of this is the time of the anti-Vietnam protests, the students.
Yes, yes. The Americans, I mean, I used to analyse lists of protests when they signed papers, and who are these people? They were usually a combination of American research students at the top and girls who were freshmen at New Hall at the bottom. But the American call-up, the flight of American students to had made them really very revolutionary. But people like our Home Secretary, Mr. Maudling, whom I wholly disapproved of, had an idea that the Cambridge University undergraduates was shortly going to march on Whitehall, and I can remember. Did you ever know Michael McCrum was Master of Corpus?
Yes, yes.
Well, his son Robert, as an undergraduate, was at Corpus too. And Robert led a sit-in at the economics building, which is the bottom of our garden, so and after about 2 hours, he was fed up, he was bored. So he walked across our lawn and said he was bored. Could he have a cup of tea? And I thought that was sort of the very opposite distance to marching on Whitehall. Mr. Maudling's theory.
Lovely story. Was this the time of the garden? I think
yes, the garden house. Yes, was part of it.
Yeah, they would protest against the Greek
colonels.
Did you have to deal with that?
Yes, yes, I did.
It
was complicated.
Very.
Also, it was complicated more because the judge was a man called I can't remember. The judge was a fool and made remarks in Cambridge, like made remarks in public, like the evil influence of the Cambridge dons. You see, and here was I having to get up in public and say these are jolly good dons, kind of thing. There's no evil influence whatever. And so then my friends in the law used to write to me saying, "Look out, you're going to head up the contempt of court if you're not careful."
And then you went on to be Regius Professor for quite a long time.
That was I was a tertium quid, some people wanted Geoffrey Elton, who was a very good historian, and some people wanted Jack Plum, who was a very good historian. And the people who wanted Geoffrey Elton hated Jack Plum, and the people who wanted Jack Plum hated Geoffrey Elton. So
they hated you slightly less.
The pundits, the Vice Chancellor and pundits believed that they had to have a sort of third party who was no use then nobody would mind. I think they probably didn't mind. But anyway, I was told by the university I was doing good if I moved from Dixit to Regis, so I did, and enjoyed myself.
You mentioned those two eminent Cambridge historians who I knew a little bit. Is there anything more to say about either Geoffrey or Jack as historians?
I think if I were going to take this question seriously, I should say that although Geoffrey's now probably in the generation which regards him as wrong about the main theories,
About Cromwell, I mean, and things.
Well, more about Henry VIII, I think,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And yeah, yes, like that Cromwell, yes,
Yes, that's
certainly.
right. Yeah.
That probably... Geoffrey was a very powerful researcher into archives. And Jack, I mean, the fact that he never finished his life of
Walpole.
that couldn't have happened with Geoffrey, I think. Nevertheless, they were both good things to have around. Yeah.
The other historians, I've thought of three, and then I'll stop. Who it would be nice to hear what you thought. One was I should declare an interest. He was a dear friend of mine. Was Peter Laslett. Did you?
Well, Peter and I were undergraduates together, you see.
Were you?
And when I was a member of the St John's College History Society, Peter was the secretary of it. He was. We were both fourth year, I think. And the most brilliant paper we had in our time as undergraduates in that society was by Noel Annan from King's.
Good heavens.
And Noel came and he offered us a paper on Admiral Byng. And came to a room in John's, I can remember, and we all sat down absolutely thrilled and rapt by Noel on Byng. And I remember saying to him afterwards, it was the first time I ever met him. And I remember saying to him afterwards, however, you're very learned about Byng, how did you do that? So he said, well, somebody published a book on him yesterday.
Like my cheating with the Encyclopaedia Britannica. How nice. And Peter you liked Peter and got on well with him.
Yes, though Peter was more eccentric than I was, in the sense that it was a bit of eccentricity in him, wasn't it?
Yes, there was indeed. Oh, yes. A charming, confused man.
Yeah.
Then the second is Hugh Trevor Roper, who nearly became my DPhil supervisor, and I went to his lectures on Gibbon and Macaulay.
You were in Tudor?
Yes,
in Stuart,
yeah, that's right, yes. And he came here, as you know, to Peterhouse. Some people liked him very much, some people liked him less. Did you get on with?
I happened to be one of those who got on very well with him.